Greetings and salutations, and welcome back to our leveling time-lapse of my human rogue. This time we are going from level 26 to level 27. So if you're new here and you're wondering what is going on, well, basically you're watching a time-lapse of me leveling my rogue, in this case from 26 to 27 as I just mentioned, and then I throw a bit of commentary on top of it. So if you pay attention now, you can actually see I'm going to train. And in this case I got cheap shot, so I'm actually replacing my pickpocket now on my quick bar with cheap shot because I prefer to have it like readily available. But I also, since I started playing classic again, I used pickpocket way more than I used to. So whenever I'm against humanoids, I actually stealth up to many of them and do some pickpocketing. So I actually keybinded this one to the half key. If you notice here, I'm actually buying a weapon. So in the last video I shortly touched upon the topic about buying weapons or how I manage my weapons, and I actually mentioned that I would go to the auction house and buy weapons. So over time, whenever I feel I'm falling behind on the level of my main hand weapon or offhand weapon, I would go and replace it. And I also mentioned that it can be hard to find an offhand weapon, especially in this lower level range. So if you might have noticed, I only bought a new main hand weapon, but I did try to find an offhand weapon. I know things is going really fast here, but just wanted to elaborate on that. So now, I actually found a group for Stockades. So Stockades is a fairly, in my opinion, easy instance. But also, there's not really much loot. But if I recall correctly, these guys I found here were actually pretty cool guys. And we actually, I think all of us, we kind of picked up most of the quests. I think that's basically one of these dungeons you do once, maybe twice, just to do all your quests. And what's interesting here is that there's actually quests from other places in the world. A few videos back I actually talked about this thing that sometimes you find quests in different parts of the world on different continents that you didn't expect would fit here. So I can't remember exactly where, and I think I even failed on that the last time I talked about it, but I think there's a quest either in Ironforge or outside Ironforge that actually ends up and leads to the Stockades thing. And I did not bring that quest here. So about Stockades. So there isn't much loot to be had in Stockades. I know we just saw like a blue item drop. I'm actually not sure if that was just a BOE, I can't even remember. Or if it was actually an item that drops in here. But a lot of the bosses doesn't really drop any decent loot here. So again, you're here for the quests and for the XP. And so now we're going through this really fast, but we're actually clearing all of these small cells because all of us had this quest for these bandanas, these red wool bandanas. You can actually see me tracking the quest on the right side, and I haven't even gotten anyone yet. But this group was actually quite nice, so we kind of had this agreement that we'll just go through until everyone has their stuff. And the cool part is, I don't even think we kind of talked about to agree it. It's just something that basically happened because everyone had the understanding that we were here to get our quest done. So we basically went through each and every cell to clear them out. Yeah, so we just had a wipe here. I cannot even remember why we had that, but someone messed up or something. I think that the tank guy we had here had a bit of trouble holding aggro. I'm pretty certain that he wasn't even protection spec, but I don't suppose many warriors are at this level because it's really hard to level, especially if it's your main character, your first character. Respeccing back and forth is very, very expensive. You don't have the money to do that. So if you notice here, out of the blue, people start rolling, and I'm like, what happens? And it's because we found this chest. And it's pretty common courtesy that you roll on chests, right? But I just was surprised that this guy could just have needed it. We wouldn't have noticed, but he was actually kind enough to tell us. Also, if you just noticed that this one guy in the group, he won this lockbox, and I told him I can open it for you, so I did. And then he just handed me the lockbox because he couldn't really use what was inside. And I think these small courtesies are also really amazing. I also tried that people tip you out of the blue whenever you like open lockboxes for them. And I think these small kindnesses go a long way. I tend to also, when I have enough potions because I'm leveling alchemy, I also give away potions for the people I group with. And this is not about saying how awesome and kind I am to other people. This is actually, I think it's a good thing to do in terms of the entire group, because if the tank has a few extra potions, there's a better chance that you'll survive these tough encounters because you can pop that potion that he otherwise wouldn't have. So it benefits everyone, I think. So let's talk about drop rates for a second. Notice that how much time we already been in here. So fair enough, we have 5 people going for the same red rule bandages in this case. I only have 1 so far. And that's a really low number. And I think one of the things I might not really enjoy too much about the classic experience is drop rates and maybe also spawn rates. I think the view is a bit skewed right now because there are so many players farming for the same items, for the same mobs and so on. But I think sometimes you get the sense that you're starting to, at least I do, sometimes it feels like you're wasting your time when you're basically just killing the same mob over and over because you want to get some specific items. I think it's fair, you cannot expect a 100% drop chance for everything, but sometimes when the drop chances are just ridiculously low, it's demotivating. At the very least, then why not do it differently? I suppose when you're designing these quests that there's like a calculation how many mobs in general you're supposed to be killing to fulfill your goals. And I was just considering that rather than having a ridiculously low drop chance, why not increase the drop chance and then just increase the amount needed to complete your quest? That way you will have like these smaller success experiences rather than the failure and oh, I didn't drop. So you kind of have that sense of progression and not that sense of wasting your time. At least that's sometimes how I feel it. And don't get me wrong, I am not saying we should start changing how the classic is, because I'm fairly certain that in the retail version some of these things have been changed and more streamlined and made a bit more, you could call it casual minded. But I'm just voicing what I think can be frustrating about the classic experience, and that maybe forms the entire picture. It's part of that whole picture of what is the classic experience. So I don't think I'm gonna be going too deep into what is the classic experience, because I know there are some people out there that are extremely passionate about what is the classic experience. And for me, I'm just happy that we are able to play the classic version of World of Warcraft again, and that's it. I don't really have any opinion how you should play it and why you should play it. Just enjoy it. And of course behave yourself, but that's a given, I think, in any situation. But if you look at the amount of red rule bandages I have by now, it's 7 out of 10, and I actually think that we kind of finished the main part of Stockades now. Actually, we're just now running around killing mobs for these rule bandages, and I think that's actually only me and one other guy that I'm missing them now. And I think we even went as far as we started killing respawns just to get that number. So, and I don't know, I think that's a bit weird that you have to either do the dungeon multiple times or you have to actually kill respawns in order to fulfill your quest. I think then the drop rate is just so low. But with that said, I remember enjoying this run to Stockades because it was my first time back for a long while, and the people I was with here were pretty cool people. So that was really nice. Also, if you notice in the chat, people are actually checking up on how much is still needed. So we are definitely only here now just to get the last of the group members to complete this quest. So if you look at the XP, we got almost half a level from this one, and then we started turning in the quest, and then we are getting quite a bit more. Already now we're actually walking around to turn in these quests, and I think from here on now in this video most of it will just be walking around turning in quests. But not only in Stormwind, I think we actually had a few other chains where we have to go out to other areas. So a few videos ago we touched upon this thing that sometimes you have to go to lower level places. We had this quest where we had to go all the way back to Northshire Abbey to turn in a quest. And I think soon we will actually have to go back to Elven Forest to deal with a quest we have. And that is, I think that's nice. It's maybe a bit tedious, this World of Warcraft that it kind of turns into sometimes, but it kind of forces you, in a good way I'd say, to explore the world. And if you don't like it, well, just don't do the quest. So you're actually not being forced to it, you're being encouraged. Maybe that's the word I'll use. So notice this guy, he's called Tyrion, this small gnome. And back in the day, Game of Thrones wasn't a thing, but I started thinking, is this a reference to Game of Thrones? I know that the Tyrion guy in Game of Thrones didn't have a bot, but This is like World of Warcraft version of it, right? And through that quest, a bit of intrigue is going on and stuff, so I don't know. I think that could very well be a Game of Thrones reference. So, spoiler alert, does that mean at some point there'll be like this huge screen on a dragon that just goes ballistic and burns down Stormwind? Who knows? Let's just hope no bells are ringing. So you probably already noticed that we are back in Elven Forest. And Elven Forest is, as you know, a low level area, but we are doing a fairly high level quest compared to the area's level at least. And what I enjoy is actually notice this chest here. I mean, it really stands out, right? And who haven't noticed that when they were lower levels? At least I noticed it, and I couldn't for the life of me remember what it was about, but you knew, kinda had the feeling there's a quest involved here. So I found that quite fun to get back here. Yeah, so we also had this quest for the Tower of Azeroth. And I actually think it was kind of by coincidence that I had these quests that all led out into Elven Forest. I didn't really plan for it, so when I noticed that, oh, I have several quests out here, it was kind of lucky that I could just go out and turn them in. So now I make it sound like that I actually had a ton of quests here, but I think I only had like one additional. I just picked up like 2 in Stormwind that led me here anyways, but it all added up, right? So I had these 3 quests that I could go and turn in, so that was amazing. So now I think we actually headed back to Stormwind again, back to this Turian guy. And so I can't remember if there's many of these, call it event-driven quests, I don't know, in the retail version. I don't remember that being there, but that might have been. But actually, here we have this quest again, and now we actually have to wait to turn it in, because other people are doing the quest, and there are some events that needs to unfold before we can actually access this guy again. And I'm not really sure if I like this or not, because on the one hand, there's the immersion factor of it all, that the world is going on around you, and I kind of like that. But on the other hand, we are playing a game, and right now we're just waiting, and it's not really that fun. So I know this is all fast forwarded, so it's going pretty fast, but we were waiting for quite a while, and also after we started the quest we kind of had to wait. Now we're waiting for events to unfold, and I suppose that's fair enough. But maybe a little less waiting, I'd say. I suppose it's kind of the same as doing escort quests. There's also a lot of waiting. While some other people are doing the escort quest, you would have to wait for the guy to respawn and stuff. And then you can argue, is that immersion that you're waiting for a respawn? But that's a mix, right, of the MMO world. That you get some RPG and you get some MMO, right? So right now we are just running back and forth and turning in the different steps of the quest. But we'll actually eventually end up in the throne room. And we'll actually be standing next to the king, which I find a bit funny, because in the retail version that king has all grown up and stuff, and here he's still a small kid. And I think that kind of shows how much time has passed, right? So he's just a little guy standing there, Anduin Wrynn. And well, I just found it funny, at least. So we also got a new ring now, but here it is. We're getting close to the level up. Once again, we're having the level up in Darkshire or in Duskwood. Anyways, if you like what we're doing here, do consider to leave a like. It really helps out. And if you're new, you should definitely hit that subscribe button to tag along. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and you'll see me in the next video.